there's a difference between like you get the job description and you know what the daily responsibilities are or what you're expected to do. But then there's the, going the extra mile and being able to do it at a higher level. But also the initiative to get the skills that are necessary in order for you to be successful.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Reach Your Prime. I'm Jared Barnes, your host and founder of Prime U. We develop talent within organizations and support individuals in their personal and professional pursuits of excellence. Today, we're talking with Walter Brock, former Director of Athletics Development at Columbia University in New York. Walt began his career as a post-grad intern for the NCAA and has since worked with the Oakland Raiders as a sales account executive and Director of Sports Services with Conference USA. Walt is a native of San Francisco and a former student athlete at St. Mary's College and Sacramento State University. He's also a guest lecturer and leadership consultant with Forward Progress Athletics Consulting. This is one of our most fun episodes as we dive into Walt's story and his experiences. Enjoy. Well, welcome to another episode of the Reach Your Prime podcast. I am Jared Barnes, your host. Really excited today. We have a special guest, Mr. Walter Brock. Walt has had experience at the collegiate level, the professional level, at the NCAA, conference level, you name it, he's had experience in it. So Walt, welcome to the show.
Jared, man, thank you so much, man. Excited to be here with you guys.
Thanks, Walt. Thanks. And man, I've had a chance to read up on you, just incredibly impressed about your background and things you've been able to accomplish, West Coast, East Coast, all across the country. So impressive, man. But real quick, if you wanted to just introduce yourself to our audience and tell us something, that might not show up on your LinkedIn page or might not show up on your bio about your story.
Okay, great. Again, man, glad to be here. Walter Brock, originally from the West Coast. Been fortunate, man. Sports and education has really saved my life and set the tone for me as well. I was exposed to higher education at an early age. My sister and I have about a 10-year age gap. And when she was at San Jose State University, I was a little kid, man, and I had a chance to run down by, the library, man, hang out in the dorms, go to football games. And I had no idea what she did to get there, but I knew that I wanted to, work hard at, school and sports in order for me to kind of have a similar experiences as her. And so I was fortunate enough, was a football student athlete at St. Mary's College of California and Sacramento State University. And went through some challenging times there. I was actually on the last football team at St. Mary's. They discontinued the program while I was there.
Wow.
And so when you talk about, man, overcoming adversity and facing challenges, that was a part of that experience. Was fortunate enough to receive my undergrad from there, and the NCAA granted an exception. So I was able to go to Sacramento State for grad school, and I was able to play my last 2 years of football. And actually it was a blessing in disguise because that's where I was able to start interning in the athletic department. I knew I wanted to work in athletics in some capacity, but had no idea. I saw the administrators, at our games and at our meetings, but had no clue exactly what that all entailed. And so Catherine Zadonis, she's the associate athletic director at UC Davis.
Okay.
She at the time was overseeing our compliance area at Sacramento State. And she gave me a chance, man, and told me to come intern with her one summer. I did, learned a lot about the rules and regulations and the reasons why they're in place. And then from there, she helped me, get the NCAA internship at the NCAA office. So I owe her so much, man. And that's why for me, in terms of all the work that I do, in terms of being able to pay it forward, is very important because we're not here. No one gets to where they're at alone. They all have, a backstory or have someone who's helped them along the way. And so I'm very fortunate. So that's how I got my start.
Man, that's great. That's great. But let's back up, man. I know there's a lot we want to dive into today. Let's back up to that St. Mary's College experience, man. We've seen about different athletic programs who have had to shut down sports. That's actually, a lot more common than I think people realize. And obviously the most notable was UAB football a few years ago. But just walk us through that experience, man. What was that like? Where it's like, hey, we're no longer having a program.
Man, we were, I laugh because it came from nowhere, man, out of nowhere, really. We had a coaching change. One of our coaches left and he took a job at Bucknell. And then we had a new coach that came in and we switched our offense. So we were first like a triple option team. And then with our new head coach that came in, he converted over to a spread. But as you know, man, it takes time when it comes to personnel and having the right people in place, especially, on offense to get that together. So that season, that was the '06 season, we were struggling a little bit, man. We were struggling, and we only won one game that year. And so the writing was on the wall a little bit, but we didn't really know. So fortunately, what happened, man, we after the football season, we're going to spring. We do all the morning runs leading up to spring practice. The week before spring practice, we're at a local high school called Marimonte. They have great facilities, so we were running some drills there. And then at the end of practice, we brought it up, and our head coach said, "Hey, I need to meet everyone in the locker room." So we go in the locker room, and we're like, "Man, who got in trouble this past weekend? What's going on?" But when we walk in, we had the chancellor, the athletic director, and some members of the board that were there. And the conversation was, "Hey, guys, this is a difficult conversation to have, but the board is meeting next week, and we've decided they're contemplating if we're going to retain the football program." And we were like, whoa, where's this coming from? And we were Division I on the FCS level, but we didn't have a conference. And so we would literally play everyone from Cal Poly to Montana State to Florida Atlantic to Bucknell to Boston University. BU had a program too. So it just wasn't sustainable. And as you know, man, being a former football student athlete, those trips cost a lot. And even if you're in a conference, right, and you're getting funding coming in from boosters and all that, but we didn't have a lot of that infrastructure in place. And at the same time, St. Mary's a basketball program on the men's side and women's too began to really make a climb and a push. And so the thought was, hey, let's invest our resources into our basketball programs and our facilities. And so that's what happened. So it was a unique situation, man, because a lot of the upperclassmen, some of them were getting ready to graduate. So they were in positions like, okay, if I have 1 year left, do I leave? Do I compromise my academics? You had a lot of young guys on the other end who didn't have a lot of film at all. And these are guys from LA, inner city LA, Richmond, Oakland, you know what I'm saying? And so it was a tough situation for them to figure out like, hey, I came to St. Mary's for football and academics, but now like the rug is being, pulled from under me. And so, one of the things I talk about all the time, man, is transitions in life, right? Transitions are tough, especially the ones that you don't plan for. And so like being able to kind of change your perspective and your mindset, it's not easy. It's a process, but myself and four other guys were able to transfer over to Sacramento State, and it was a blessing in disguise for me. And again, like I mentioned, that's where I was able to go to grad school. I was able to get exposure to working in athletics and met some great people who helped me along the way to figure out what my career was going to be post athletics. And then one thing I really want to say too, man, and this is about the power of the game of football. We talk about the camaraderie, right?
Yeah.
It was a little intimidating, right? You leave from one program and now you're going into a new program. It has its own culture and way of doing things. You're like, man, are they going to accept us or embrace us? And man, Sacramento State, man, from the administration all the way down to my teammates, bro, like they really put their arms around us and welcomed us, man. And so that helped us along in that process.
That's huge. That's huge, man. Now I want to dive deeper into this piece on transitions because we as professionals, we face that all the time, whether it's transitioning roles, transitioning, physical locations, somebody in our office leaves, there's new leadership. And I think, man, I've seen it time and time again, especially with young professionals. We sometimes get so stuck on the how that we're not able to adapt.
Absolutely.
It's that adaptability piece, man. So you just want to expand on that, in transitions, not necessarily just at St. Mary's to Cal State or Sac State, but just throughout your career. Now you're going into the NCAA office, and then from the NCAA office, another transition into now you're working at the conference level. So just talk about that a little bit, how you've taken that experience going from St. Mary's to Sac State. Now you're doing that as a professional.
Man, it's a great segue. And I would even back up a little bit more, man, just looking at my background, just kind of growing up. It was my mom and I, and my father passed when I was young. And so with that came some transitions in terms of just the family dynamics. Yeah. So I had to kind of position myself there. And then we moved a little bit. I actually grew up in the Bay Area, but then we moved down to Alabama. My mom went to college down there. So after she finished up there, we moved back to the Bay Area. And that's when I finished up high school and went to college. So I think I've been kind of prepared for transitions kind of all of my life. But from a professional perspective, I would say that relationships, we know that relationships mean everything. And so as I looked at the transitions for me, it was one, looking at the experience that I would gain from moving to one place to the other. The other piece would be
Mm-hmm.
how can I combine the skills that I learned at a Sac State as a grad student, then as an intern at the NCAA, then from there to Conference USA. Like what were some things that I can utilize to help me with that transition? And then, man, it's all about being a sponge, man, being a sponge and really
Yeah.
listening. Whenever you make a transition somewhere, there's going to be, I'll say, probably 6 months to a year transition anyway, where you have to kind of listen to what's going on, observe and feel the
Yeah.
culture, and be able to get a good sense of what's going on. But for me, I've always looked at transitions as a positive, even when something could be a negative to that causes the transition, whether it be negative or positive. I just try to look at, okay, what are the lessons that can be gained from it, and then how will this add to my story, and then from there, the lessons learned and the testimony that kind of comes out of it. How can I use that to inspire other people so that they can feel confident when life throws them different transitions and challenges their way.
That's it, man. And we're shaped so much by the experiences we have, particularly in transition. If I had to look back and say, like, man, this is really where I became me and really came into my own, it was all in those periods of transition.
Mm-hmm.
But in that growth, I think that's where the wisdom comes as well. It's funny, as you were talking, I was thinking back to where, again, I experienced transition as a professional early in my career. All I wanted to do in transition was find that stability. And so for me, it was, I want to do things my way. I would come in and try to implement immediately. Where, looking back, and I'm sure you can look back too, not the best strategy, man. So you hit a piece on listening, and it just hit me deep. I'm like, man, that's it. Where it's now, it's so funny. We do the podcast, the show, speaking, all that kind of stuff. But man, I listen now more than I ever have my entire career. And it's just, when you listen, you're able to grasp, other people's understanding, be able to empathize better, be able to understand, your fit within the conversation versus, pressing toward, man. And we talk about transition and you hit that listening piece. How have you seen yourself grow as a listener, particularly if you want to touch on your development experience?
I learned early on, and I'm still growing in this process, just as a professional and as a man. But in terms of the difference between like listening and hearing, and then active listening. And so for
Yeah.
me, what I'm working on now is being more active. And what I mean by that is trying to clear my head when people are, sharing thoughts, sharing ideas, and not trying to rush and kind of come with a rebuttal, or just kind of come with my thoughts, but more just kind of sitting and observing and listening and kind of taking it all in. Because I think that's active listening is a pillar of serving leadership. If you're going to be
Yeah.
serving a group, whether it's a group of donors, student athletes, whatever the kind of constituent group is, listening and being active in it and knowing, kind of creating that safe space for people to share and communicate with you is a key component of being a leader. And so when you touched on it, man, in terms of fundraising and philanthropy, that's listening is everything. So as you work with
Everything. Yeah.
alums and donors, you give them the platform to share their story of why they want to connect or reconnect with the university. You listen to some of their stories of, I enjoyed my time when I went to football games or when I was studying late in the library. Oh, you know what? I met my spouse, here. This is why it's
Mm-hmm.
special. And so as you kind of unpack some of those memories and those stories, that's when you're able to figure out, okay, you know what, if you're a first generation student and the scholarship opportunity that you received gave you an opportunity to come to school, get an education, and to change your life, but then also transform your family's life, then maybe, scholarship opportunities is something that would resonate with you now in terms of being able to kind of pay that forward. And so it's all about coming to the table. Yes, you have an idea of, the offerings that we have or ways that alums can kind of, reconnect. But it's more about, it's all for nothing if I throw out everything and then, alum comes back and says, hey, no, this is not really what I want to do. But if you listen to me, if you listen to them, they can kind of guide you to wherever you want to go. So yes, you're right, man. When it comes to fundraising and philanthropy, active listening is very key.
Critical, man. And that's one of the things they don't teach you that. I think you just learn that on the job and just through experience. Man, I look back and just the experiences where you don't know what you don't know, but now you do. Have you had any of those, where it's like now looking back on, especially going from the collegiate to the professional level and the work you've done, with schools like Columbia University? Are there any specific skills, outside of that active listening piece? It's like, man, at the time I didn't even know, but now, you know what? I do know the value of that skill.
You know what? I would say that you're giving yourself patience and giving yourself grace.
Yeah. Dive into that deeper. I think that's really important.
Because whenever you make a transition, or if you're in a new role, man, you're constantly being challenged. You're learning new things. You're going to fail. And what I've learned is a lot of times, especially like former athletes, we're very competitive, and we're our worst critics. And so, if you face a challenge here and there, and you fail, you might get down on yourself and like, oh man, I haven't picked this up yet, or I wasn't able to close this deal, immediately, or whatever it is. I think that there's times where we kind of beat ourselves up a little bit. And so I'm learning that giving yourself time to kind of go through the process and give yourself grace through it, that allows you, one, to be able to take in the lessons that come from that. Because success doesn't happen, instantly or immediately. It takes time, and that growth, and that cultivation, and bumping your head and failing forward, and all of those lessons shape and form you so that you're prepared for the success that will come. Also, the other piece of it is you're able to appreciate the victories more. When you're able to kind of go through that valley season a little bit and bump your head and listen and kind of take those lessons. Once you get on that other side, you're able to really, appreciate the victories more, and you know that you're stronger than you thought you were. And so, but you wouldn't know that if everything just came, kind of easy and easy for you. So I would say that I would, and I'm still working on this today, man, even in my personal life, just allowing myself to have patience and growth and giving yourself grace. And my football coach, all my coaches used to say, like, enjoy the process or love the process. I mean, that's something that I would say that's important across the board.
Man, no, that's great. And that's so interesting because I just had a conversation with a colleague of mine. I don't know if you've read the new book Kobe just came out with, but the Mamba Mentality.
Yeah.
Oh, man, anyone listen to this, I highly recommend that book, The Mamba Mentality by yours truly, Kobe Bryant. But with that, it was so interesting, man. We were both talking just because we're both competitors. And sometimes when we achieve, we immediately go to the next thing. It's like, okay, we did it. That's great. Now what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And we don't necessarily appreciate what just happened, like you just said. Or when we fail, when it doesn't happen, it's like the world is crashing down. And it's like, oh man, like I should have done this, this, and this. We can go back, and whether it's getting feedback from somebody or watching the tape, and it's like, man, I should have. And it sometimes can eat you alive. I think sometimes we talk about this at a high level, but just from a practical level, do you have, maybe an example over the course of your career where, you did truly give yourself that grace and you were, patient with yourself, whether it's on the job, whether it's in your personal life or whatever it may be?
Yeah, man, I would say when I made the transition from the Raiders, I was in a group sales kind of business development role where I was working with businesses and nonprofit organizations in the Bay Area, and they took a chance on me because I didn't have any revenue generating experience at all. But coming from Conference USA, working at the NCAA office, I did have experience in terms of being able to share ideas and kind of get influence and be able to kind of push things through. But it's a different ball game when you're actually trying to learn how to generate revenue and bring stuff in. And so while I was there in group sales, you have to be creative when it comes to different, theme nights, events, and different things that are going on. And so I remember initially, like, man, this is new. This is a different ball game where you're having to learn how to ask for money. And so it took me some time. I had to change my mentality in terms of what money meant to me personally. And I had to remember the value that I was adding by, creating experiences for people to come to the game. So for me, it was more like I was a little gun shy at first. I also was a little scared, to be honest, to ask for money, especially at that time. The Raiders, I know my Raiders are struggling this season too, but we were struggling for real back then. So I learned learned that through that process, I had to give myself, some time and some reps, just like
Yeah.
when we're on the field, Jared. Like you remember, man, like
Yep.
those mental reps for me. I remember that that used to be even more helpful for me in terms of remembering my technique, remembering the gap assignments and all that, than actually going and playing full go. And so I had to do the same thing when I was working with the Raiders. Was like pull myself back. Okay, here's what we're selling and why. Here's the why. Here's the why this is important. And so for me, it was really learning, okay, how to understand the why. Why is this important? And then from there, again, going back to the listening to the clients, and then being able to really share like why partnering with the Raiders or coming to games would be important. But it took some time for me to get there.
Absolutely. Oh man, and I'm so fired up about this conversation, man, because we're building on each piece. But I want to dive into that money aspect where it was a mental transition, and I'm about a year into business now, and I had to make a mental transition from the time when I was young to where a major purchase was the new Jordans on Saturday. That was a major
Right.
purchase. That's like whoa, we're spending major. That is major cash right
Right.
there. Where now you had to make that mental transition to where, you're talking about real money. You have to have a level of
Mhm.
confidence and a level of self-efficacy. There is a barrier required to have those conversations. I'm so interested, man. What really contributed to that? You said the reps piece, but what else contributed to that mindset change when you started to get in spaces that you may have never been in before? Because I just have such a heart for the listeners who have these dreams and aspirations, but they may have never been in that space that they aspire to be in. They want to play in the league, but have never, spent time with
Mm-hmm.
professionals. Whatever you want to call it. You want to work for that major Power 5 university, but you're at a D2 or D3 school right now, and you've just never been in the space. So what is it for you that helped make you make that mental transition, in your case, around money or around asking, for a significant amount? What contributed to
So
that?
I would say two things. The first thing was I had a great manager and mentor. And so I would say whenever you're making a transition anywhere, or if there's a new skill set that you're picking up, one, you have to do your due diligence, right? You have to do your research, read up on it, find out who are the leaders in that space, so that you can kind of get some knowledge from there. But really, it was having a good mentor and someone who had been in my shoes before and was able to kind of help me with that transition. And so with the Raiders, his name was Dave Cal. He's now overseeing the athletic ticketing office and area at UC Berkeley and at Cal. But Dave, man, he was a mastermind at being able to really explain the why, and then being able to really
Yeah.
maximize your assets. And so
Yeah.
that's what I learned, man. It's like being able to develop the narrative and the story is, I would say, half the battle, because when you're able to go in there and share the reasons why coming to a game is important. So, for example, if you look at the fondest memories that I have going to a game, to football games, are going to the game with my family, spending time with friends or colleagues, being able to network and being able to kind of have a conduct business or discuss business in a fun environment. The Raiders were good. It's a good backdrop for being able to bring kids to the games, right? Especially if you're working with youth organizations, so that they can come and get exposed to the business of professional sports and also be able to dream about maybe one day playing, but then also exposing them to, what are the other areas I can work in so I can still be attached to the game. And so for me, it was about, okay, the money piece is important, and I need to get comfortable with, asking for, whatever that dollar amount is. But if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
comfortable knowing the reason why I'm asking or why this will be beneficial
That's
for
it.
you, then the money's not going to be anything at all. So I've been in rooms and
Yeah.
situations before where you have the kind of the cold call. You're fortunate enough to get a meeting. You get in there. It's
Mm-hmm.
real cold when you walk in, and then my style of doing business isn't. I don't try to be too formal. To be honest, it's more about like having some conversations with, because people are people. We all want and desire the same things, and so for me, it's more like, okay, let's talk about, why are you interested? Why did you pick up the phone call? Okay, what is it about the Raiders that interests you? Okay, got it. So you're in banking and you have clients. Do you think that the Raiders game would be a good, platform for you to discuss business? Yeah, it will be, but I'm not sure exactly what area in the stadium. oh, okay, well, we have sweets, we have, so then it allowed me to kind of identify, what kind of product, I wanted to sell. And then by that time we've built rapport, we've had a, good
Yep.
conversation. And then it's like, okay, here's what it's going to cost in order for you to get this value in return. So I would say having a good mentor that you can really kind of guide you, and then also understanding the why behind the money that you're asking for.
That's it, man. And I think understanding the purpose in what you're doing is huge. Like, for me personally, I'm not wired to sell something I don't believe in. I can't, I don't have it in my DNA. It just feels
Yep.
wrong to me. So if I understand exactly what I'm doing, how it benefits people, oh man, it makes a world of a difference. So, listeners out there who are, seeking additional opportunities, understanding why you're doing what you're doing is only going to help you with your confidence level moving forward, whether you're presenting, whether you're interacting with people, whatever it may be, understanding that underlying why. Oh man, I think that's huge. That's huge, man. And you mentioned too, being able to listen to a point where you can add value instead of, listening to give them something that they may not need. I think that's, oh man, I think in our world today, we just see that all the time. We see that all the time, man. So no, that's some incredible set of experiences, man. I think some real knowledge. But I know we're getting close on our time here, Walt. I just want to dive into the personal side of you. We could talk about experience, professionalism all day, but what about you? How have you seen yourself grow personally along your journey?
Whew, man, to look back, man, on when I was a student athlete, I'll even go back, just growing up, man, going into high school, and to think that if that I was going to be able to have some of the experiences that I've had, man, I would have laughed. I'd have like, come on.
Yeah.
I do want to really stress to everyone the importance of dreaming and writing things down and just putting it out in the atmosphere. And I don't want to sound too, how some people say like, oh, well, you're getting too spiritual and all that. I really, I
Right.
really believe, man, that the more that you kind of envision yourself doing things, you put things down on paper and you talk about it, things start to kind of align. You have to do the work. Yeah, you have to do the work too to kind of get there. But it's important. So I'll give you an example, man. When I was in grad school, I knew that I wanted to work in sports and athletics in some capacity, but I had no idea really. I didn't have a network. And so one of my mentors said, hey, have you heard about informational interviews? And I was like, no, I haven't. So she told me about it. And so I wound up reaching out to the commissioner of the Pac-12 at the time, the athletic director at Cal, Stanford, University of San Francisco, and also down at San Jose State. I'm a grad student, so I sent them an email like, hey, listen, I want to work in the business. I've seen that you've had a ton of success. Would you be able to spend 5 to 15, 15 to 30 minutes with me to kind of share your background and your path? And I'm like, man, these people are, big time in the industry. They're not going to respond back. Every single person responded back to me. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
Okay, so then I wound up going in and meeting with these leaders in the industry, and they were able to share their path. And one of the things I walked away with was that, man, there two people are the athletic director at Cal, athletic director at Stanford. They're in the same kind of role, but they have different paths to get there. And so that encouraged my spirit, because I think a lot of times, man, we look at our backgrounds and we look at maybe some of the trauma and things that we had to overcome or obstacles to get there. And you're like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to see or get to that other side. But when you're able to listen and kind of hear other people's stories, like, no. People are, again, the trauma or the issues may be different or may look different, but everyone has to overcome something, whether it's anxiety
Absolutely.
inside, whether it's external things, whatever it is, man. But from that
Yeah.
experience, that showed me that I'll be able to kind of do whatever I want to do. And that set the tone for me in business and also helped me in life.
Man, just incredible. And quick plug, you guys, if you're looking for more information on informational interviews, we have several articles on frontofficesports.com about informational interviews, different tips for professional development. But Walt, I want to end our time, man. There's a consistent theme that I heard throughout our time together, and that's this theme of initiative. Just growing throughout your career, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, man, but how would you define initiative? And more importantly, how do you think you could cultivate that as a professional?
Initiative is everything. There's a difference between like you get the job description and you know what the daily responsibilities are or what you're expected to do. But then there's the, going the extra mile and being able to do it at a higher level. but also the initiative to get the skills that are necessary in order for you to be successful. And I'll give you a quick example of this, because I knew that I thought that I wanted to become an athletic director, and I knew that fundraising and philanthropy was something that you have to get in order, that experience you have to get in order to be there. So as I looked at being at the NCAA at Conference USA, that Conference USA transition to the Raiders, although it was leaving college athletics to go to the professional ranks, I made that move because I knew that it was going to give me experience in generating revenue. I didn't know I didn't know how long I was going to be with the Raiders. I didn't know which campus I was going to wind up getting back to work in fundraising. But I knew that just walking off the street, it was going to be tough for me to get a fundraising job if I had no experience at all, generating revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way I've kind of operated in terms of initiative. It's like, okay, if I'm trying to get here, like, what are the skills that I need? What are the skills that I need to get there? What are the experiences I need? And also, who do I need to align myself to learn more about, and also to kind of that will help me grow and cultivate me. So initiative is everything, but you have to go get those mentors. They're not going to always come to you.
Yeah.
You have to go get those experiences. You have to, if public speaking is something that you want to improve upon or feel more comfortable about, go to Toastmasters. That's something that I did when I was working with the Raiders. I knew I had to do more presentations. And so, yes, man, we're all constantly growing and evolving. But it's on us to take the initiative to say, hey, here's where I want to go, and here's how I'm gonna get there.
I love it, man. I love it. You have to have an idea of where you want to go. So I think initiative starts by identifying, where is the end goal? And then you can begin to foster that in yourself, man. So I love it, because I think there's sometimes can be a disconnect, whether it's our day to day or additional pressures we have outside of our career that can take away from that initiative. But, finding different ways to foster that within us, whether that's, getting in the right fit. I think sometimes initiative has a lot to do with your fit, because if you're not in a place where if it's not a good fit for you, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of initiative. I know
no
that
question
much.
on that.
No question. I'm sure you could give us a million examples, and so could I, but I think it has a lot to do with your fit, and then identifying where you want to go. So, Walt, this last piece of our podcast, we call it Final Thoughts. Just anything you'd like to share, whether it's a project you're working on now, a message to our listeners, but we really turn it over to you, man. So we'd love to hear your final thoughts.
My final thought today is I'll go back to the dream and dreaming. When I break down dream, it stands for dedication, responsibility, education, attitude, and motivation. So that's how I break down dream. And so I feel like we just touched on earlier, being able to identify what your purpose is, aligning yourself with that purpose, and then also aligning yourself with the organizations that match and meet your values. Like you said earlier, man, fit is key and very important. But being able to dream is all about, again, spending that time being still and understanding, okay, here's what my purpose is, here's what my philosophy, and then from there, building out a plan to get there. But then also knowing that challenges are going to come, transitions are going to come, ones that are expected and unexpected. But that's what being able to overcome those challenges and those transitions, that's what gives us that muscle and that growth, and that helps us become the best versions of yourself. So again, man, dream. When challenges come, be able to embrace them, enjoy the process, love the process, and then know that you're going to be a better version of yourself on the other side.
I love it, man. And say that your acronym for dream one more time for our listeners.
Okay, yeah, dream. So it's dedication. So being dedicated, being responsible, educating yourself, attitude, having the right attitude and mindset, and then motivation, making sure that you tap into the right things that keep you motivated daily.
I love it. Walt, thank you so much for your time. Listeners, I know there was a lot of valuable information on this show today. Walt, where can we find you, whether it's on social or online? Where can we reach you at?
Yeah, man, you can reach me on Instagram and Twitter. It's at WJ Brock, so WJBROCK. Both on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm also on LinkedIn as well. But man, Jared, this was great, and I hope we get a chance to do it again, man. The time flew by. I'm having fun, man.
I know. It's what happens when you get fired up, man. You get fired up. I got to take the initiative to schedule another time
Absolutely.
with you. There you go. That's the negative day. But Walt, thank you so much for your time, man.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it, Jared.
Just to recap, here's 3 things. No one gets to where they're at alone. Seek out a mentor. And if you can't find one, become one. The act itself will open the door to opportunity. Create a safe space for people to communicate with you through active listening. It's a key pillar of servant leadership. To be successful in sales and in life, mind the narrative, not the money. Learn why they want to buy or engage with you and craft a narrative that will tap into their heart. Check out Walter on LinkedIn, and please share this podcast and visit us at primeu.org to find more valuable tools to help you reach your prime. Our next podcast is coming up soon, and if you subscribe to our newsletter on primeu.org, you'll get it in your inbox right when it comes out. Send me an email at jared@primeu.org. That's JARROD @primeu.org. And remember, it's not enough to know. We must apply. Take the lessons you're learning and start using them now. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.